Any more questions? Seeing none, any motions? Motion. Representative Natarajan.
Open the floor for docket nominations.
Is there a second? Any opposed? Seeing none, any nominations? Representative Quasi.
To nominate docket A, consisting first the legislation about gifted and talented programs, second a legislation about Namibia, and then third the UBI.
Is there a second? Second. Representative Belusu.
Barring any other docket nominations, I move to close the floor for docket nominations.
Is there a second? Any opposed? Seeing none, that does move us to our docket. Just to reiterate, that is gifted and talented on page 45 of your legislation packet, Namibia, page 47, and then UBI, page 48. Seeing that we have our docket in order, I'm going to call for our first speech. Any and all sponsoring gifted and talented, please rise. Between those, that goes to Representative Natarajan. This is the negation speech by Representative Lawal. State. Granted.
Hello, everyone. I'm back. This is Representative Lawal, spelled L-A-W-A-L. Once again, spelled L-A-W-A-L. Assuming we're all good to go, I'll go ahead and get started. On May 17th of 1954, the Supreme Court finally gave students like me the opportunity to succeed with Brown v. Board. In honor of the powers that allowed that to happen, I ask you to fail this legislation and protect the opportunities that uplift students who don't look like the ones that are supposed to succeed. Fail this legislation. Now, Representative Belusu comes up here with arguably the best argument on the affirmation when he tells you to reframe the entire debate, because it's not about whether or not these GT programs are beneficial. It's about whether or not they are working, period. I'd argue that because they're not working, you fail this legislation. You fail in order to reform the GT program as opposed to completely abolishing it. Representative Belusu makes a complete error when he says that there is a marginal benefit for our rich constituents. That means there is a benefit for GT programs. It's just that that benefit isn't being found in low-income communities because the resources to do so don't exist. If you want to fix GT programs, give them the funding they've been asking for. It's really not that hard. On top of that, our sponsor, Representative Natarajan, Representative Durairaj, Representative Benoit, and Weijia Sequeira all tell you that we should abolish because of racial inequality. I'd argue that because our country is racially unequal when it comes to success, you fail this legislation and protect the GT programs that allow our students to succeed. You protect GT programs because they finally give students an opportunity to fight against marginalization. The benefits of GT programs is that it allows you to learn better, to learn how to be a better student and to get better results. That is extremely important for students that are not expected to succeed. Representative Belusu comes up here and tells you that because these students are in these GT programs, they are failing. But that's not the case. It's because they're in low-quality GT programs. So what happens when you put them in high-quality GT programs after reforming them? The National Center for Education Statistics found in April of 2024 that kids who participated in gifted and talented programs had math scores that were 8.9 points higher, reading scores 6.4 points higher, and math and science scores 5.8 points higher. If you want these students to succeed, put them in the programs they deserve to be in. Don't abolish them completely and say that you're helping them instead. Then, Representative Berlin and Durairaj tell you that the pressure is too much. The pressure is always going to be there because it comes from the parents who simply want their kids to succeed, whether it's going to private school or going to Kumon or just doing extra practice at home. Parents will do everything they can to make sure that their gifted and talented students use those talents for the greater good. Then Representative Benoit and Durairaj tell you that the economic benefits of passing this legislation outweigh. If you want to fix infrastructure funding, pass legislation that fixes infrastructure funding. Don't mask fake empowerment with this legislation. Uplift and fail.
Speech time, 3 minutes, 10 seconds. Questioners rise. Between those, that goes to Representative Belusu.
Hey, I want to analyze this from a time frame really quickly. Right now, lower income schools have worse GT programs because they have like lower quality teachers, right?
I mean, it's not just that. They don't have enough resources to maintain those GT programs properly.
So right now, these GT programs are negative. But when we pass this legislation, we're able to redirect infrastructure funding and they can get more teachers. That means we turn that negative to a positive, and then we can reinstate GT programs.
You and
right?
I both agree that the reason why GT programs are bad in these low-income schools is because they don't get the resources.
Exactly.
Fill the legislation and give them the resources in the
Representative
GT
Adams.
programs.
A lot or a little? How much does the U.S. spend on public education?
A lot of money.
Right, exactly. And do we see those outcomes improving because of that?
Yes.
We see outcomes improving just because we're investing a lot of money. We have great
Yes.
public education.
The racial gap between like inequity when it comes to school achievement has decreased when it comes to black and white students over the past 20 years.
Okay, so by investing specifically in programs that can help empower black students, by failing this bill, we can help those students even farther.
Yes.
Thank you.
The chair will absorb the remaining 5 seconds. Speaker may be seated. Negation speakers, please rise. That goes to Representative Lawal unopposed.
This is Representative Lawal, spelt L-A-W-A-L. Once again, spelt L-A-W-A-L. Assuming we're all good to go, I'll go ahead and get started. When a man who used to work in an oil production facility in Nigeria was asked what happened to his country, he responded and said, "This land used to be green." Our government has a habit of exploiting African countries without considering what exactly the long-term impacts of our actions will be. This legislation is just another example of America taking, and taking without giving back. Fail this legislation. I want to rewrite this entire argument that the affirmation has told you when they said that today's legislation provides Human Rights Watch and makes sure that the Namibian people are not being taken advantage of. Yes, that is true when it comes to the workers' rights, but when it comes to the land usage of Namibia, this legislation has the exact opposite of protection. Look at Section 2B. It does not say, Representative Wang, that U.S. companies will require approval from the Namibian government. It says that the Namibian government shall give them approval. They don't have a choice if they accept this piece of legislation. But then Representative Kwasi tells you that they have the choice. They can choose to pass, they can choose to fail. But it's not that simple. Understand the context of Namibia's current status. The Guardian explains in December of 2019 that in the status quo, Namibia has a 43% poverty rate. Its people need its help, and this legislation promises that help, but is a false promise. The International Trade Administration explains in February 2024 that last year, Namibia made $1.25 billion off of its REM industry. Effectively, this legislation doubles their economic output when it comes to REMs. This legislation is the equivalent of adding an additional 10% to Namibia's GDP. They will never say no to putting food on their people's tables when they have to sacrifice their land instead. Namibia doesn't have the option that the affirmation is telling you. They're going to choose the United States because it means that their people have something to eat. And other countries have made that same mistake and have paid for it time and time again. The Guardian tells us on June of 2021 that the United States signed oil drilling deals with Nigeria. As a result, for decades, over 10,000 babies died every single year because of the pollution. Representative Jamil, where's your accountability? Let me show you where it is. The Corporate Accountability Lab found in February 2023 that in Nigeria, Shell paid $16 million. That was it. Is that enough accountability? I don't think so. That's what happens to Namibia when you pass. That's what happens to the land of Namibia. That's what happens to the people of Namibia. Their communities are destroyed, their land is destroyed, and their entire country doesn't have a future. I'm not willing to trade ours for theirs. Their skies deserve to be blue just as much as ours do. Negate.
Speech time, 3 minutes, 10 seconds. And all questioners, please rise. Between those, that goes to Representative nickel.
Hey, Representative, what do you think this bill is trying to accomplish?
This legislation is trying to give fair trade agreements when it comes to REMs with Namibia.
Really? So what do you think it has to do with climate change? Maybe solving the global climate crisis?
That's nice and all, but we solve climate change in the United States and destroy Namibia's landscape.
So what if there was just this massive lack of rare earth minerals globally, and we could cooperate with a UN task force to develop these resources? What would that mean?
I don't care if it means that Namibia no longer has the
What
landscape
if not
it
doing
used to
that
have.
meant human extinction?
Representative Berlin.
Hi. So I 100% agree with the abuses we've seen in the past when there isn't enough regulation from the government. My question for you is, why can't the Namibians reject approval? The word approval doesn't mean just doing it. It means to accept. Why can they not just not
Because
accept it?
that's conditional upon the entirety of this legislation. They don't get to choose whether or not they accept approval for this one and that one. Under this legislation, if they accept this
Why?
contract, all companies must be given approval, period.
I understand what you're saying, but why is that the case?
Questioning time has elapsed. Speaker may be seated. And you know, affirmative speakers, please rise. That goes to Representative Lawal.
This is Representative Lawal for the very last time ever. I know there's 2 L's in there, but please only focus on the W. Before I get started, there's a couple of people that I want to say thank you to. First, Rohan, Manas, Parth, Ishan, Kazi, Ishan Singh, Juliana, Chris, Sophia, Naresh, Helios, Akilan, Adrian, Quad, David, Vishal, Arnav, the Bellboys, the Seven Lakes debate team, the Jordan debate team, my big brother Hanif, who got me into the event, my sister, who I hope stays in the event, my mom, my dad, Coach Kabler, our amazing coach who had to deal with us in 5th period, and the best coach in the world, Bryce Butrowski. My mom told me to never look away at the homeless. My mom also told me that $1 can make a difference. My mother also told me to always be grateful. It is because I am grateful to have my position today to advocate that the dollar really does make a difference, that you affirm this legislation. I want to return us to the very impetus. It is not working. Representative Wang and Natarajan, you guys are completely incorrect. Welfare is not doing its job. The Washington Post explains in February of 2019 that 1/4 of the people living in poverty, 13 million Americans, are not receiving any help from welfare, even though they desperately need it. There are cracks in our system that need filling. That's what UBI is for. On top of that, there's absolutely nothing in this legislation that says we're going to be pulling money away from welfare. In fact, we're only funding it through these taxes and the removal of tax deductions, meaning that there is no impact on welfare. In fact, they work together. You get your welfare, and whatever it doesn't cover, UBI does the rest. This has 2 different functions. First, it allows you to choose what you spend that external money on, meaning that if you need a couple extra hundred to pay for rent, or you need a couple hundred extra to pay for medicine, you can make that choice that welfare didn't give you. On top of that, it means you're no longer dependent on the numbers that don't necessarily reflect your economic situation. When welfare says no, UBI says yes. Then, Representative Harbinger, Natarajan, and Tran and Hathalia tell you that today's legislation is problematic because it doesn't focus on our lowest income. I'd like to refute what nobody on my side has. Today's legislation does not give $1,000 to everybody. Pay attention to Section 1. This $1,000 is taxed just like income. The people who need that $1,000 the most will keep it in the way that is proportional to the amount of income that they make. Meaning that if you're making millions of dollars, you're going to keep a little bit of that $1,000, and the rest of it goes to the government to go back to people who need it more. This legislation works and is balanced because it helps our people. Then Representative Palani and Luigi Sakura come up here and talk about standardized deductions. Please understand how they work before you come up here and preach about them. If you're making over $24,000 and you need a $24,000 deduction, you're making tons of money. You don't necessarily need this $1,000. Standardized deduction only applies if you're making excess of the standardized deduction, meaning that if you're making $14,600, you're not affected because you were never going to receive that standardized deduction in the first place. The poverty level had already protected you from that tax. Change is necessary. Our people have gone too many days without a sliver of hope. Be that change and pass this legislation for them.
Speech time, 3 minutes, 8 seconds, and all questioners please rise. Between those, that goes to Representative Palani first, followed by Representative Pathalia.
Hey, Representative. Who were tax deductions and tax exceptions designed for?
Everybody.
It was primarily for lower income constituents, right? So
But
by
it applies
abolishing
to everybody.
both of these aspects, wouldn't that hurt them during tax season?
No, it doesn't hurt them.
Why?
If you're making $14,000, hold on. If you're making $14,000 right now, you're not getting taxed by the federal government, which means you wouldn't have been eligible for those tax deductions in the first
But
place.
those are just tax deductions. What about tax exceptions? You haven't talked about those at all.
Tax exemptions were banned in the United
Tax
States. We
exemptions
never
do
applied
exist.
tax exemptions past
Tax exemp-
2022.
Then
Search
why
it
are we
up.
banning
Representative
the legislation?
Adams.
Hi there. I'm on your side. I just want to clarify one point.
2022.
Then
Search
why
it
are we
up.
banning
Representative
the legislation?
Adams.
Hi there. I'm on your side. I just want to clarify one point. The increased taxes in this legislation will lead to downward pressure on the amount of useless spending by high-income individuals, right?
I mean, not just that. More people will be buying products, which means they don't have to reduce the amount of productivity that these businesses have.
Exactly. But low-income individuals will get the actual impact on when they're able to spend on goods and services.
Yes.
So this is, in fact, progressive.
Indeed.
Thank you.
The chair will absorb the remaining 8 seconds.
In the House, the top presiding officer is Jordan Melamed, American Heritage School's Palm Beach campus in Florida, coached by Bo Lint, PJ Samorian, and Erin Lynn Pritchard. Your winners in Congressional Debate House are, in 6th place, Ryan Jamail from American Heritage School's Palm Beach campus in Florida, coached by Bo Lint, PJ Samorian, and Erin Lynn Pritchard. In 5th place, Samuel Berlin from Hawken in Ohio, coached by David Childrey and Bob Schertz. Coached by Mark Woodhead and Karen Cruz. Placing 3rd in the House, receiving a $250 scholarship is Reese Adams from Milton Academy in Massachusetts, coached by Scott Karen and Lindsay Donovan. Placing 2nd in the House, receiving a $500 scholarship is Jordan Melamed from American Heritage School's Palm Beach campus in Florida, coached by Bo Lint, PJ Samorian, and Erin Lynn Pritchard. Your national champion in Congressional Debate House, receiving a $1,000 scholarship is Fadhil Lawal from Seven Lakes High School in Texas, coached by Bruce Piotrowski and Kaylin Kabler. The Carl Munt Trophy is a special award named for the association's first president, Senator Carl E. Munt of South Dakota, and presented each year to the school that has accumulated the most congressional debate participation points. Contenders for next year's award are, with 278 points, Hawkins School in Ohio. With 279 points, American Heritage School's Palm Beach campus in Florida. With 297 points, Plano East Senior High School in Texas. With 303 points, Plano West Senior High School in Texas. With 340 points, This year's Carl E. Munt Congress Sweepstakes Trophy is awarded to Seven Lakes High School in Texas. Students Juliana Franco, Rohan Kathuria, Fadhil Lawal, and Ishan Quasi, coached by Bryce Piotrowski and Kaylin Kabler.